Hello and welcome. We begin with the land acknowledgement. The municipality of North Grenville acknowledges that the municipality operates on the territory of the Anishinaabe. We recognize all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples who now call North Grenville their home. We respect and support the need for cultivating a strong relationship, and we commit to Indigenous informed decision-making to foster the path towards reconciliation. So I guess this is meeting number 1, 2025, January 15th. To begin with, Mayor Peckford, who usually sits here and chairs the meeting, sends her regrets. She's traveling right now, and I'll be chairing today's council meeting. So a couple of announcements, first of all. This is our first public meeting back after the holidays. So on behalf of the Mayor, Council, and the municipality, we'd like to wish everybody a happy new year. The outdoor rink, the Kemptville Creek Skateway, located next to Curry Park, is open for another season. Enjoy the 600-foot skating area, complete with lights, picnic tables, and porta potties. Kudos go to Director Mark Guy and the Parks and Rec team for their monumental efforts in making this happen, and hats off to Herb Cloutier, our stalwart community member, who was instrumental in bringing skating back to the creek over the last few years. We're pleased to invite the community to come and enjoy this wonderful seasonal gathering place for another season. So lots of room for shinny hockey as well as pleasure skating. Next, the Kemptville Winter Carnival. With the opening of the Skateway, we are also now looking forward to the return of the Kemptville Winter Carnival on Saturday, February 1st, for its third season, and its first in the intended home at the Skateway in Curry Park. Plans are being finalized for a day of family fun, food, and entertainment, and more, with additional activities in the Ferguson Forestry Centre. Watch for the Winter Carnival Facebook page for more details as they become available. And finally, Civic Awards nominations are now open. Every year, the Council of the Municipality of North Grenville recognizes and honors the achievements and contributions of members of the community through the Civic Awards program. These awards express our appreciation for the many individuals and groups who are helping to create a better community. Nominations are now open for the 2025 award recipients. More information on the Civic Awards page of the municipal website. Thanks. And now we'll just move on to the meeting. And the first item on our agenda is approval of the agenda. A couple of suggestions I have, or a couple of changes I'd like to make. Our delegation, I'd like to see deferred to February 4th. The presenter, unfortunately, is looking after some health issues with a member of the family. So that item will defer to February 4th, and I'll reach out to the rest of the council to see what. Oh, there's a second change. I'd like to move the. Where am I? Okay. The public meeting up earlier in the agenda. That's item K 7.1. So we'll get that up and happening sooner rather than later. So those are the two changes I'm suggesting to the agenda. Any others from Councillor Strachan, Councillor O'Sullivan, and is Councillor Wilson with us? Hello, Debbie. I hope you're feeling better. Can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I'll look for a mover and a seconder. Councillor O'Sullivan. Councillor Strachan, seconded. And call the vote. All in favor? That's what you need, right? Okay. Then we move on to the consent agenda. These are items that, whoops, sorry. Oh, disclosure of interest, thank you. Chloe, Ms. Preston's got my back and won't let me skip over important items like disclosure of interest. Any disclosures of interest from members of council? Councillor Wilson? Okay. No, all right. Now, we go on to the consent agenda. So items listed under the consent agenda are considered routine or no longer require further discussion and are enacted in one motion. And also, any member of council can pull something off it. I think there's only one item on the consent agenda tonight, and those are approval of previous minutes. The minutes of November 21st, December 3rd, December 11th. Does any member of council want to pull any of those minutes from the consent agenda? Seeing none, then we'll move on. Or we need a mover and a seconder to approve the consent agenda. Councillor Starkerian, Councillor O'Sullivan. That's done. Yeah, I will. Okay, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Did we deferred so we don't need to? Right. Okay. So sorry, I'm going too fast. Who moved that? Councillor Strachan, Councillor Sullivan, and calling the vote. All in favor? Passed. Okay, we're generating paper like crazy here. That is that. Okay, great. So now we're going to be moving into a public meeting. And I've got some prescribed, I was saying to the clerk earlier, we should set this to music because it's the same narrative each time. I'll take a glass of water. Okay. Council will now hold a public meeting to consider an application for lands located on a portion of 2475 County Road 18, part of Lot 24, Concession 3, former Township of Oxford-on-Rideau, now the Municipality of North Grenville, to amend the zoning on the property from rural to residential first density with a holding symbol R1-H as a condition of severance. That's file number B-163-23. I must advise you that this meeting is your opportunity to voice any objections or concerns you might have with respect to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. If the appellant does not provide oral submissions at this public meeting or written submissions before council adopts the proposed amendment, the Ontario Lands Tribunal may refuse to consider their objections. Any persons who wish further notice of the council's decision concerning this matter should give their full name, address, and postal code to the planner following the adjournment of this public meeting. Are there any people here for this meeting? If you could just raise your hands. Great, thank you. Now I'll pass it over to Director Amy Martin, who will walk us through this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. If we'll just go to the next slide, please. So the property is located at 2475 County Road 18. It's a portion of the property that is being proposed to be rezoned. And as you'll see, the property is located on County Road 18, just to the west of Somerville Road. Next slide, please. In the aerial image, you can see that the property is currently developed. There was a provisional consent provided by the United Counties to sever off a 1.6 hectare portion of the land, which if we go to the next slide, it demonstrates the area of land that's being severed. So the land that was severed is being added to the 86 acres of land adjacent to it, which there's no current Planning Act application, but those lands would become part of a future application on those lands being part of the larger merged parcel. Next slide, please. So as noted, so consent was provided by the United Counties, who are the approval authority for land division, to sever off 1.6 hectares of land. As mentioned, they are intended to be developed as part of a future plan of subdivision. No application has been made to date for that property. As a requirement of the severance, an archaeological study was required as there's an existing archaeological resource located within 300 meters of the property. So when we review applications in regards to our official plan policies, one of the triggers for an archaeological assessment is if there is a known resource within the area. And as part of the archaeological study required, there was archaeological resources that were found on the property, and those are in relations more so to early settlements. So looking at like early 1800s to the modern era artifacts that were found on the property. Next slide, please. So staff did a fulsome policy review of the provincial planning statement, the county official plan, and the municipal official plan, and found that the proposed application conforms to the policies of those documents. What those documents speak to is where there are cultural or heritage archaeological resources that are found, that the proper studies and processes are undertaken to understand what's on the property, and if required, to preserve the resource. Next slide, please. So as a condition of severance, the municipality has asked that these lands be placed into a holding provision and rezone the lands to a residential first density zone. So the requirement of the holding would be that no development could occur on that 1.6 hectare piece of land until such a time that a stage 3 archaeological study is undertaken and then a development agreement is executed. So in essence, a stage 1 and stage 2 study was done. It found the resource, and we're asking that these lands be placed into a holding category to prevent future development until such a time that a stage 3 archaeological study is conducted and a development agreement is executed. And if there are any recommendations that come out of a stage 3 archaeological study, they would be incorporated into the development agreement. Next slide, please. As part of the process, we do circulate our internal departments. To this time, no comments were provided. They were circulated, but they came back that they had no comment at this time. We received a letter of no objection from Enbridge Gas and no objections from the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville. And at the time of the submission of the report, I had not received any comments from members of the public in relation to the application at hand. Next slide, please. So it is staff's recommendation that council enact a bylaw to rezone the 1.6 hectares of land that are being severed off from 2475 County Road 18 from the rural zone to the residential first density holding, with that provision that no development could occur until such a time that a stage 3 archaeological study occurs and a proper development agreement potentially addressing the recommendations coming out of that study is implemented. And that concludes my presentation. If there's any questions from members of council, I'd be happy to field them.
Council, any questions before we proceed? At this stage, you get another opportunity. Yes, go ahead, Council.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Through you to Director Martin. So this 86 acres, the parcel of land, the 86 acres, eventually this 1.6 hectares or 3.95 acres, I believe it converts to, would be attached to that 86 acres. Is that correct?
That is correct. It is a lot addition.
Okay, thank you. And this parcel of land extends all the way through then to County Road 43. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So this land would then, there's future servicing for this land in a possibility?
Through the Deputy Mayor to Councillor O'Sullivan. So the future development of those lands, which aren't the subject to the zoning amendment this evening, would have to provide a site servicing plan. So these lands would, when they do come forward, be built upon what will become municipal servicing.
Okay, thank you. So as I'm in favor of development and therefore this zoning, but only on the condition that there would be an active transportation connection at that end as well as at the 43 end to connect this land to, say, the sidewalk that already goes from Clothier to Heard, down Clothier to Heard. I think that we must really be proactive in ensuring that there's connectivity before we further develop to the west without having solid guarantee that there will be connections into to the rest of the urban area. Is that possible at a zoning to have that part of a guarantee? Or does that have to go to a site plan? And how do we ensure that it will happen?
Through Deputy Mayor to Councillor O'Sullivan. So at this stage, we're just dealing with the the severance, this property, which would be understanding it's a lot addition to the larger 86-acre parcel. I cannot conditionally zone the property to make that a requirement. The appropriate stage to talk about things such as active transportation and connectivity would be at a plan of subdivision application. So there would be an entirely separate process to which this 1.6 hectares of land is being added to the overall parcel, but a much more fulsome process through that plan of subdivision, which would include a traffic impact study, site servicing, stormwater management plan. It would require, as part of the traffic impact study, we do ask for active transportation to be reviewed and comments provided. So that is at that stage, not at the zoning stage for as a condition of severance where that would be appropriate.
Okay, thank you, Director Martin. And this would come to council at that stage.
Through you, Deputy Mayor. So plans of subdivision, council endorses draft conditions to the United Counties because the United Counties are the approval authority for plans of subdivision. So it would be at that time when the draft conditions come before council that council would be able to have input into the draft conditions and what's brought forward.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from council? No? Okay. The committee will now hear from the applicant, followed by members of the public who wish to speak either for or against the proposal. Following any comments from the public, the applicant will be offered an opportunity to respond to the questions raised. All persons wishing to address the proposal will ask their questions through myself, the chair. Please state your name and address and postal code prior to addressing the committee. Committee members may also wish to ask questions through the chair to those making presentations. So it was Vince. I lost you. Yeah, okay. Come on down and state your full name and where you're from. Thank you.
Good evening, Deputy Mayor. So my name is Vincent Deneme, courtesy of Urbandale. So my address is 2193 Arch Street, Ottawa, Ontario, K1G 2H5. I'm here in support of the rezoning for the 2745 County Road 18. We have no objection to the rezoning as a condition of severance, and we have no objection to the holding zone. Any questions on
Yeah, this is strictly rezoning to facilitate a severance.
Yeah.
That'll be the next step, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions from other members of council? No? And I have to look up there. No, I can. None. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to come down and ask questions and the applicant can respond to them? Any questions from members of the public regarding this zoning bylaw amendment? You'll have to come down and just state your name and your address. And you'll have to turn the mic on to get a little red light at the top there. There you go.
All right. My name is Tom Bingham. I live at 38 Somerville Road. Postal code KOG1JO0. I just have a question regarding that particular piece of property is adjacent to existing properties that have new homes built on or homes built on them. And I'm wondering what the setback requirements will be. Will there be any changes to the setback requirements for any construction that goes on in that particular parcel of land? Or will it be subject to the standard municipalities setback requirements?
I'll get Director Martin to respond, but you're referring to the severed part?
Yes,
Yes.
this piece that's being added to the main property, which will become a subdivision.
Right.
And the rest of that subdivision primarily is butting up against either Somerville Road or vacant land. In the case where there is butting up against existing houses, my question was, is it possible to ensure that the new houses being developed in that subdivision are set back from the existing property lines?
Director Martin will be able to answer that in detail.
Through you, Deputy Mayor. So the I can't say 100% sure without an application in front of me as to what those setbacks will be. Typically, we have our base setbacks in regards to how many meters you have to, a house is to a rear property line. Typically, it's around 6 meters. That's kind of the standard for any lot within town. Understanding that sometimes we have some larger urban lots that still exist, but there are certain parameters in which are kind of standardized across the municipality. So oftentimes what we see when developers do come in is they'll ask to the rear yard setbacks are usually maintained around 6 meters minimum setback from the property line. And then the property on the adjacent property would also have their 6 meter setback as well, or whatever that house may already be set back as. We typically don't increase the setback unless there's a rationale for it. Typically, increased setbacks are because there might be like a natural feature. But when it comes to the residential properties, we generally maintain a standard across the board, depending on the residential zone.
Okay, I think I understand that. So you're saying that the developer has a requirement around the perimeter of the property that they are putting forward for subdivision. And then within that, there's a requirement and the individual lots to also have a setback from that. Am I correct in that assumption?
Yeah, so like every property would have a zoning. You'd be required to be set back so far from your front property line, your side property lines. So maybe the best example to give, especially with think of side property lines in some of our smaller, our tighter subdivisions, minimum need to maintain approximately 1.2 meters on the interior side yard. That's because of fire separation between properties. You can't have houses unless it's like a semi-detached or a townhome, but we try to maintain at least that 2.4 meter separation between properties where there's a clear detachment between the units. Yes. It's same with rear lot lines because you need that backyard amenity space. And oftentimes in rear yards, especially in subdivisions, that's where you'll find your drainage easements. For townhomes, it's access easements. Any future change of zoning on the property is also a public process. So neighbors within 120 meters will be notified. Same with the plan of subdivision as to when that comes forward. Typically with plans of subdivision, some developers might come forward and ask for reduced setbacks, but typically those reduced setbacks might be more based in the front yard. Don't often see it in regards to just reducing the rear yard setbacks for residential units. Only in that's your private amenity space where residents recreate.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? No? I have a question, Director Martin. It's the holding symbol is upon completion of archaeological study, a third generation of it, or what? Was there some preliminary work done, and what did they find? Do you know?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So a stage 1 and stage 2 archaeological assessment was conducted for the property, where they did find some artifacts that lend itself more to the late 1800s kind of settlement. So there were, I think, at least 1 or 2 test holes that were dug on the property where those were discovered. So based on the stage 2 archaeological assessment, they recommended a stage 3, which is a lot more comprehensive, and the spacing between testing sites is much smaller. And when they lay out their grid as to where they dig for further resources. And it would also lend itself that when a future plan of subdivision comes forward, an archaeological study is typically a requirement of one of the studies that have to be submitted as part of a fulsome application. So we would anticipate we'd see a study done on the larger parcel as well that may find additional resources, but that's why we do these studies. So there was a known resource within 300 meters, and it triggered our policy. And we, in fact, they did find a resource on this property as to which we're asking for further investigation, and that stage 3 archaeological assessment will provide further recommendation in regards to conservation or not.
Great, thank you. I think Mr. McDonald would know that in past years, or many years ago, that corner of Heard, Somerville, Clothier was a little community in and of itself. I forget what the name of it was, but it doesn't surprise me that there's stuff that they found during those studies. My second question, if you'll indulge me, is it's the motion says to rezone a portion of the lands. So that's just the lands that we see shaded in green.
That is correct,
Yeah,
Deputy Mayor. That's
yeah.
the area that is being severed and subject to the zoning amendment.
The existing, I would assume that that's R1, the existing property. What's the zoning? What will remain in terms of zoning for the existing property after it's severed?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So the zoning, without pulling up the zoning map, I'm going to provide an assumption that it's more than likely has a rural zoning. We do have pockets of our urban area that still have the rural zoning, just carried over from when we consolidated the zoning bylaw. So typically we just leave the zoning category as is. And again, because the condition was related in relation to the 1.6 hectares, staff found no need to touch the zoning on the retained parcel, as there were no further matters to address in regards to setbacks or use.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure what part what we'd end up with. So unknown plus R1. Okay. Any other questions from council? No? So I guess we're going to move to close the meeting. And I will table the resolution, which is that council enacts and approves bylaw 04-25 to rezone a portion of the lands at 2475 County Road 18. So we'll need a mover and a seconder. Councillor O'Sullivan, and Councillor Stracker. And I'll call the question. All in favor? Great. Thank you very much. That goes to you. And we're moving on. We're back. Where are we on the agenda? Help me here. CAO reports. There we go. Okay. So the next item on the agenda is K1-1. That's appointment of municipal officers, and you're going to deliver that, Chloe. Thank you. Ms. Preston.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Barkley. And through you to council and members of the public present. As council may recall, last year, the clerk's office undertook a comprehensive review of the officers and committees and appointments bylaw and the various bylaws that existed at the time, and we undertook a consolidation. At that time, we undertook to review this bylaw annually to ensure that it was up to date and accurate on the appointments of officers within the municipality of North Grenville. As our first public meeting of the year, we thought it prudent to bring the officers bylaw and to reflect two important changes within the municipal appointments. The first to reflect the appointment of acting Fire Chief Ursulak, present this evening, and as well as the addition of 2 livestock evaluators to be added to the bylaw to reflect current training and operations. So those 2 individuals have been added to the draft bylaw for council consideration this evening. I will also provide context that as appointments come up through the year, we will bring this bylaw back from time to time to reflect those, to ensure that we have an accurate representation of the current appointments and officers within the municipality. I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions? No? Councillor Wilson, any questions? No? I don't have any questions. This seems pretty straightforward. So we'll need a mover. I'll read the motion that council adopt and pass bylaw 03-25, being a bylaw to appoint municipal officers. Who's going to move that? Councillor O'Sullivan? Okay. Oh, and Deb, thank you. I'm going to get whiplash, I think. Okay.
Sorry, Deputy Mayor.
It's okay. I'm going to have to move you around here so I can see you at the corner of my eye. Okay. So it's on. I've asked already for questions. There were none. So I'll call a vote. All in favor? Great. Getting better at this. There we go. Moving on. You're next up as well, Ms. Preston, with the new procedural bylaw. This is a first draft, and I understand that you will be coming back with a second draft after we've been able to share some more detailed questions beyond tonight. So take it away. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. And as you said, this is a first draft in addition to provide it to council in open session for you to provide comment and feedback. By no means is the intention this evening to enact and pass this bylaw. As council is aware, the procedure bylaw is the bylaw that guides the proceedings of our meetings, how we call them, how we add items, and how we generally conduct ourselves during meetings. This is a requirement under the Municipal Act for every council in the province of Ontario to have a procedure bylaw. It is recommended that it be reviewed from time to time. As we are midterm in council's current four-year term, we thought it prudent to bring this forward to highlight some items that we believe could be amended and brought forward for reflection of our current practices. As council is aware, our current procedure bylaw was enacted in 2019 and temporarily amended during COVID to allow for electronic or virtual meetings, as were many municipalities across the province. The Municipal Act subsequently allowed that across the board in an amendment to the Act. And as such, we haven't had the opportunity to really look at the procedure bylaw since then. We have amended our practices since 2019. Our current procedure bylaw speaks to committee of the whole and a variety of items that we no longer utilize. And so this draft begins to look at some of the potential areas that council could direct on how they wish proceedings to go. By no means is this a perfect document. I was re-reviewing my document today and noticed some further amendments that are required. And I will say our office has gone through about 5 drafts before bringing you this first draft. And so it is very much a draft that we are hoping to receive council's feedback on. I also would like to note that I know that this is a very lengthy document and I don't expect full feedback this evening. It is comprehensive and in some cases much more detailed than our current procedure bylaw. So I would note that I'm happy to receive feedback following the meeting via email or in person, and I can summarize the feedback provided and come back with a subsequent draft. My hope is that I will come back in February with a subsequent draft, and at that time we can review. And if we are comfortable with the draft provided, we may enact, or we could come back again in March. I do preface that this is council's document, and it is at the whim of council as to how you wish your proceedings to go. Some are set out under the Municipal Act and don't have much variation, but others do. And it is staff's hope that we create a document that represents how council wishes to proceed and conduct themselves for meetings. I'm happy to take any questions.
Great. I think I'll kick it off. You mentioned, and I can see, I've scanned it once. It is a long document. Are we able to cut any elements from that document?
Through U2U.
Yeah, yes, thank you.
Absolutely, other than provisions that are set out as requirements under the Municipal Act.
Yeah.
But yes, we do have the opportunity to cut any non-prescriptive aspects.
And how would I identify what elements of the procedural bylaw are prescribed?
Anything speaking to roles, responsibilities, or specific acts would be as set out in their respective documents. For the most part, we've noted anything that is prescriptive of the Act where it says as per the Municipal Act or within the Municipal Act. Or any other such act, such as the Elections Act or MCIA for the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. So for the most part, those are identified. So I would say you would be very able to cut anything else that was not.
Okay, so that would be our cue if it
Yeah.
refers to an act or
Yeah.
something else.
Yes.
Okay. I'll just open it up to the rest of council if you've got questions. Deb, Councillor Wilson, sorry.
Thank you. Through you, Deputy Mayor, Chair, to the Clerk, Chloe. Is this our opportunity to single out any changes or additions, or you want them to go to you directly via an email?
I'm happy to receive them tonight, Councillor Wilson, if you have them prepared. Otherwise, if council doesn't have specifics this evening, I'm happy to take them at a later time, but more than happy to take some this evening. I will note that I have noted some numbering errors and some errors in some other sections, so we may have noted similar amendments as well.
No, mine's a minor one. Just a specific question. In 8B, the clerk shall have prepared for the use of the members at the regular meetings of council an agenda, and the following shall be the general order of business at each council meeting. And then it lists by A, B, C, D. And in our meetings now, we have the addition of reading land acknowledgements or other things. Would those pertain to land acknowledgement, prayers, rituals, that sort of thing? Is that something that needs to be added to the meeting agenda?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Deb, or Councillor Wilson, are you referring to section 10.1 where it speaks to the order of business? I apologize.
8. I've got 8B. Bylaw 419, 8.
So that's the, through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Wilson, that is our current bylaw, which does not reflect our current operations. So under the new draft bylaw in section 10.1, we have included the land acknowledgement as an item as well.
My apologies.
No.
I'm not seeing it. Sorry.
No.
Okay. No, thank you.
I would
I digress and withdraw. Respectfully.
That's absolutely okay, Councillor Wilson. I would note that council may note in the order of business in the new proposed procedure bylaw that we have included a dedicated section to public meetings. This is something new to the municipality of North Grenville and is upon consultation with the planning department to reflect having a dedicated time at the beginning of meetings to represent when we do have public meetings, such as this evening when we had a zoning meeting, to ensure that we don't need to pass resolutions to move items around on the agenda, that we've already have that preset out. It also speaks to the ability to condense the agenda if there are no items in specific sections, that we may condense it for council's easier viewing or for the public's easier viewing as well.
Yeah, Ms. Preston, what are you looking at right there? Because I've got something from the agenda package. It says it's as amended by bylaw 24-20. Is that the proposed changes?
So attachment.
Oh, have I got the wrong attachment? Have I opened the wrong attachment?
So there are 2 attachments to the report. The first is our current procedure bylaw, and then the attachment, which is noted on the agenda as number 3, draft procedure bylaw, is the new draft for consideration.
Yeah, I found it. I didn't do my homework. Apologies.
Oh, I see. It's the Appendix A is what we should be reviewing. Okay. I just read the first couple of pages and I thought, so I've actually reviewed the old one rather than the new one. So I apologize. So that just speaks to us taking some time over the next few weeks to drill down through the proper document and get back to you with some questions and some suggested revisions.
Absolutely. And through you, Mr. Chair, I do note, as I said, it is quite a lengthy document. I believe it's 38 pages for consideration.
Piece of cake.
So as I said, I'm happy to receive feedback over the coming weeks and provide a summary of council or to council in February with regards to those.
Great. Any other questions? Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor O'Sullivan, nothing? This is the document that's going to bind our hands, so we should give it a good once over. So let me read the motion. That council receive report CAO-2025-002 and draft procedural bylaw for information purposes, and that council direct staff on changes to the draft procedural bylaw and to report back and provide a subsequent draft procedure bylaw for future consideration. So the ball's back in our court to respond. Thank you. Oh, I need a mover and a seconder. Thank you. Councillor Stracker-Yin, Councillor O'Sullivan. All in favor? Thank you. I can see you now, Deb. Okay, moving on. The next item on our agenda is going to be presented by Ms. Hurlbert. I believe it's the proposal to establish a mental health initiatives fund.
Did I push the right button? Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tonight, I am seeking council direction on a proposed mental health initiatives fund. Underscored by recent tragedies and challenges in the North Grenville community, it must be acknowledged that our current mental health crisis has been with us for many years. The COVID-19 pandemic exacerbated the crisis while shining a light on the inequities in access to services and supports. Recent engagement with health and wellness services and community leaders has provided some insight into local challenges and opportunities. It's clear that there is a need for community-led prevention initiatives and that there's a role for the municipality to act as a champion and to provide support through communications and resourcing. The creation of a mental health initiatives fund is recommended to encourage community-based initiatives which align with the program goal to strengthen and build capacity for community-based services and individuals through strategies, tools, and training that improve system navigation and reduce barriers to accessing mental health resources, increase mental health literacy and skills, promote positive mental health, and reduce the stigma associated with mental health. This fund would require a clear administrative policy and process, which would need to be addressed quickly in order to respond to the current urgency expressed by the community. If council provides direction to proceed, staff would initiate program development. We would establish funding eligibility, outline application process, evaluation criteria, and reporting requirements, establish a fair and objective process for administering the funding program, provide a clear and concise guideline for grant applicants, identifying eligible organizations, projects, and project expenses. And we would seek council approval of this program prior to implementation. Based on initial costing of courses such as mental health first aid and assist, and anticipating other creative proposals which may come forward from the community, a fund of $15,000 is recommended to ensure a variety of projects can be implemented, appealing to different needs and demographics. In some cases, it may be advantageous to contribute to a project through allowance of use of municipal facilities. So it is recommended that staff be directed to include waiving of fees for some projects up to a total fund maximum of $5,000 per year, and that would be in addition to the approved fund budget, which is, as I mentioned, proposed to be $15,000. A timeline for 2025 would include policy and process development in the first quarter, and then moving on to receiving program applications and awarding in the second quarter, and project implementation from that time until the end of year, when we would also receive reporting on the projects that were completed. In future years, where funding is approved by council, we would begin that process early in the year in the first quarter. So that is the proposal that I have before you this evening. I would be happy to address any questions that council might have.
Thank you, Ms. Hurlbert. I have a few questions, but I'll hear from my council colleagues regarding this proposal. I'll open it up to them. Any questions? Councillor O'Sullivan, go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair, to Ms. Hurlbert. I think this is a very good initiative and good use of funding. So I just wanted to clarify, so someone who's capable of providing a workshop on mental health first aid could apply for the funding to do this, get space, and then open it up free of charge to anyone interested in coming to partake in that training, the workshop on first aid, mental health first aid. Is that correct?
Through you, Chair, that is definitely the type of proposal that we expect to receive through this program.
Okay, thank you. Second question then, mental health it could include dementia, Alzheimer's, et cetera, which also has a wide impact on families and people who may be afflicted with that. Would it be possible to have programming for families or people with dementia to come and partake in a workshop on how to deal with a loved one who has dementia? Would that qualify?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I do expect to also be seeing that type of programming where you're looking at the mental health of caregivers and that sort of thing in the community. And so it will be up to the community to submit proposals for these types of projects. And then they would obviously have to be evaluated based on what is received and the amount of funding that we have to give.
Excellent. That's great. Thank you for that. And thank you for your work in putting this together.
Councillor Starkian.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much, Ms. Herbert, for bringing this forward. I think it's very timely, and we know that we've had many discussions with local healthcare providers and folks engaged in mental health in general in our community. So I think it's probably long overdue, but it's timely that we can move forward with this. I'm wondering if any part of this has an emphasis on youth mental health, where we know that there are significant gaps and would require a particular tailoring. Do we want, is that a consideration as part of this discussion to focus on youth mental health, to have different categories of the kinds of submissions as we would for perhaps other kind of grant opportunities that we have at the municipal level?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think we're expecting to see a variety of demographics and proposals that would serve those demographics. And our intention is to consider priorities when we're doing the evaluation that might be identified in the program requirements. So that'll be something we can take into consideration if there are priority groups that should be identified prior to letting the applications come in. And then it will definitely come down to priorities. I mean, $15,000 is not a significant fund when you're talking about mental health services. And so we might be able to run to support, a few courses or programs in the first year. We won't know, of course, until we receive those applications.
Yes, go ahead.
Just a quick follow-up. I think to add on to what Councillor Sullivan has mentioned, the course, if somebody wanted to run a mental health first aid course with the appropriate qualified instructor, for example, it may not be possible to offer the course for free then, but it may be an opportunity to offset the overall cost per individual, and that would be acceptable going forward as well. Would it be? Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, absolutely. It may come down to being able to fund projects partially, and that there may still be some cost to participants, but hopefully we have been able to reduce the financial barriers, and perhaps other partnerships will be available and will come to light through the process that would help to further reduce any barriers and overcome those challenges.
Yeah, so obviously, and the pandemic has created a real crisis with many people's mental health, but especially youth. I think we found that they've been affected more than any other segment of the population, although we all have to a certain degree, but they're maybe less resilient. So would you, is the focus on youth here, or when we develop the guidelines and the criteria for applying, will we be weighting them towards the youth in the community heavier than, say, other members of the public?
That will be a decision that can be made through policy development, again, prior to opening the program. It is not something that we necessarily have made any decisions on at this point. We'll be seeking some feedback, again, continuing conversations with community wellness partners to ensure that we are going to be able to make the most of the fund that's available while serving the whole community of North Grenville.
My second question, thank you. My second question is about the timeline, and I don't have it here in the attachment. I wondered if we could just pop it up there. I'm just a little concerned about the timing, or I've got some questions about the timing. So in the first 3 months of this year, you're looking to develop policy and the guidelines and criteria for this grant. So the application forms and how they'll be adjudicated and all that kind of stuff. And the resolution, the draft resolution that I have in front of me talks about pre-approving. Will you have any of this policy developed before the budget is passed?
I believe the clerk has some amended wording.
Yeah,
we're not seeking pre-approval of the budget.
So we're going to, with the clerk's guidance, we're going to change that as far as what was published in terms, right?
Yes.
But we're looking at a total resourcing of about $20,000 if it's 5,000. So I think that should be changed as well. And I think you've captured that. If there's no other questions, then I'll read what I have as, do we have to amend what was published as the, not really, I can just, maybe I could read the amended one and let that stand.
The published one is only a recommendation, so without any on the floor, you still have the opportunity to read in an alternative motion.
Okay, I'll do that and we'll see what council thinks. So the motion that we're suggesting is that council support the establishment of an annual mental health initiatives fund, and that council direct staff to include a value of $15,000 for the mental health initiatives fund and $5,000 for the municipal facility fee waiving associated with this fund in the 2025 budget. And that council direct staff to draft a policy for the administration of the fund, including an allowance for related use, well, I've captured it, but related use of municipal facilities for council consideration. And you expect to have that back to us when? I won't hold you to it. I'm not going to change
Hopefully March.
Hopefully March. Okay. Well, that won't be part of this motion, but I forgot to ask that. So that's how it stands. Any reaction to that motion as read? Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think given the unique requirements of youth and that not all programming is suitable for youth and will require specific efforts, I would like to see somewhere in the draft language here that when we're talking about the draft policy, that the consideration for a certain percentage or an amount of the funding be prioritized to focus on youth mental health initiatives, be considered as part of the draft policy efforts.
So to my ears, that sounds something like a whereas youth are significantly impacted by the pandemic and are less resilient, that we'd like staff to consider a focus on youth mental health. Okay, so that's, I have to decide whether that's a friendly amendment or not. Yeah, I think that's a friendly amendment. Any other conversation? Yes, go ahead, Councillor O'Sullivan.
Thank you, and respectfully to Councillor Strachan's comment about the at-risk youth. I know for certain that seniors also have a higher incidence of depression and anxiety, and how families cope with that, how the individuals cope with that is also very difficult. And I think that equally they are in need, particularly families, are in need of similar services. So I don't think we need to focus on one or the other. There's definitely a gap in services like this for seniors. Getting an appointment for a senior with a geriatric psychologist or psychiatrist is incredibly important and long wait lines. So I think there's a big gap here and there's a big need for this as well. So we must not forget that seniors also very seriously impacted by the pandemic and became more isolated and have not got back into society as well as the youth did in many cases because they didn't have school to go back to or that kind of thing. But there are a lot of retired, lonely seniors in our municipality who are suffering from mental health issues, anxiety and depression. So they're not so much visible as others are. So I think that definitely needs to be priority for both ends. So maybe we don't need to specify one or the other, just where the needs are and where the needs come forward.
Yeah, thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Strahan.
Thank you through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Sullivan. Respectfully, I think that youth are a very particular category that mental health first aid, for example, as an example of the programming, is not suitable for youth. It is suitable for any adult. And many of the programs are established that way, that adults of any age would qualify and could fit into many programs, but the youth programming is very specific to that age group in its delivery, in the language it's used, in the approach, all of those things. So I think in that case, they don't have access to the same resources as adults do. Yes, there are isolated members of the adult community, of senior community, but they are not they don't have the same resources simply because they are not of age, they are living at home, they have other considerations. So that is why I was emphasizing that. And the most recent mental health crises that we have seen in this community has shown that the youth are particularly challenged with being able to find the resources, and we know that the schools are challenged with being able to offer those as well. So that is why I was suggesting putting youth in there, and it wasn't to discount any adults from other programming, but simply to make sure that we have a certain portion that focuses on youth and that is not lost from year over year.
Thank you. I'll jump in here. So what I understand is you're not in favor of that amendment as suggested by Councillor Strahan. Yeah. No, I understand that. So you'd be against that amendment. I'm personally in favor of it. As you know, from we recently took a look at the community grant applications, and I think in conversation in close that I can't talk about particulars, but it seemed evident that groups like RNJ and Youth Connect, hadn't come to the table to look for funding, that they're struggling a little bit. And my read is that having consideration for youth programming and maybe an emphasis on it wouldn't distract, as Councillor Strahan said, from any consideration of a program geared strictly for seniors. But I'll go to Councillor Wilson to see how she feels about Councillor Strahan's, what I consider a friendly amendment.
Through you, Chairperson, to the clerk, would you please read back the friendly amendment?
I've recorded a couple potential amendments.
Lay one on us.
The simplest that may be without a whereas statement is that we could add to the finalization of where the direction to staff is provided at the end of for council consideration. I have to include a specific percentage for prioritization of youth mental health initiatives.
Would that suit Councillor Strahan? Would you still not be in favor?
Sure, if you include an equal amount targeted to seniors, or we leave it open to everybody.
Well, I don't think we're excluding anybody.
Well, if you're specifically including, and some is not a number,
Right.
So I think you need to be more specific about what percentage you want to direct towards youth, or and then make the same percentage available to seniors who are in need. Because I know there's a lot of seniors who are in they're at homes, very lonely, who can't, and they can't get anywhere else because retirement living's way too expensive. They can't get into homes. I mean, we've heard all of the issues about the seniors who are struggling to find places to live. And you can't tell me that that doesn't cause anxiety and depression. I think they are as much in need of this service as well as their families as the youth are. So I don't think we need to specifically say it's for one group over another. I think we could leave it open to everybody, or if we're going to say you're going to target it to youth, then you might as well say you target a percentage to seniors as well. And then in that case, you should target the rest to everybody else. So I don't know. I just feel that there are seniors out there who are more invisible in terms of their needs. And we all know that particularly the housing has been a big stress on a lot of seniors. And I think it should be for everybody and not specifically for one group over another.
Okay. Councillor Strakian, any response to that? Or you
I,
want
through
us to
you,
move forward
sorry.
on the motion as drafted, or are you willing to withdraw that amendment?
I would like the friendly amendment to stay. Again, we're not excluding any other groups. Family of seniors and so on would fall into an adult category for mental health. The seniors would fall under adults for mental health programming as well. I don't think any of them would be excluded from any of that programming. R&J, Connect Youth, we know that the KYC has tried to place an emphasis on mental health for youth as well, and they're limited in their capacity to do so. I think we see fewer and fewer opportunities for youth-focused programming, and it does require a special touch. For the wording that the clerk has proposed, the certain percentage is simply to allow Ms. Hurlbert and the other staff that may be working on this to consider options for us in the draft policy, and so not to be prescriptive at this stage. And that's I'm comfortable with leaving it open for that, so that there can be some thought given to what kind of programming, what kind of cost would be associated with that, and therefore the right kind of number to include in the reserved part of this budget.
Okay, I think the thrust of this proposal coming from Ms. Hurlbert is to get a certain allocation into the 2025 budget so that we can move forward, and that she'll be coming back with policy that outlines guidelines, et cetera. So we may be getting ahead of ourselves in terms of debating where the emphasis is. But I don't see any problem with, rather than directing staff to include it, to direct staff to consider how to weight that, to consider having an age-related emphasis or a youth emphasis. So if staff considers it and reaches out to some of the stakeholders and finds that, maybe that's not ideal, and they'll come back and with a policy where it doesn't exist, and we can have this discussion going forward. Councillor Strakian.
Mr. Chair, to you, I concur with that statement. That was my intent all along, was to include the consideration for the youth allotment within this budget.
Okay, so rather than directing them to include it, we just ask them to consider. Would that be amenable?
Sure. So it doesn't change the motion then.
Well, I think the clerk is madly scribbling here and trying to keep up with our deliberation. Did you capture that last little bit? I think the emphasis is on consider age-related emphasis, youth
Well, I
consider
say
it.
age-related, doesn't have to be youth, or you could just leave age-related out. Like Councillor Strachan has mentioned RNJ Connect Youth. We have the Rainbow Youth Alliance. We have the KYC Center. We have Big Brothers Big Sisters. We have all kinds of things for youth. And she's acknowledged that they have fewer resources, but how many can you name that support seniors?
Well, I don't think we're
So
taking issue with
why
the fact that,
Just leave it the way it is.
just a second. I don't think we're disputing, well, okay, well, you'll have an opportunity. I think what we're working on is amended. I'll look to the clerk for some guidance on that.
Deb has her hand up.
Yes, oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, Deb, I can't say. Councillor
No,
Wilson.
it's okay. Through you, Mr. Chair. This is for $15,000. I think we're putting a lot of emphasis debating on something like this when we're not putting enough skin in the game for something like this. So, what is the absolute directive of doing something like this? What is $15,000 going to get for these people?
Well, if I can answer that, or I can toss it to Ms. Hurlbert, but I think we're looking at people who, to amplify certain costs that people have. So we may be, Ms. Hurlbert may be coming back to us with some sort of matching formula where we can fund up to 50% or 75% or 80%. So it's how to leverage existing resources out there in the community and to amplify them.
Okay, thank you. I just didn't quite understand it. So
Yeah, I'll just ask Ms. Hurlbert if I'm not putting words in her mouth. You want to respond?
Yeah, I think we want to make sure there's enough room in whatever policy we develop to allow for some flexibility. Times change, circumstances within the community change, needs change. We want to have a policy that suits over time and not just for this moment in time. So I've heard all of your comments, and I certainly will be very mindful of those as we look to policy development for something that will be flexible enough and still work, and will make the most of the resources that we do have available.
Great, thank you. So, Councillor Strachan, I've got rewording of your friendly amendment, or at least I consider it a friendly amendment. So let me start from the top. That council support the establishment of an annual mental health initiatives fund, and that council direct staff to, sorry, thank you. Snakes and ladders here. And that council direct staff to include a value of $15,000 for the Municipal Health Initiatives Fund and $5,000 for the municipal facility fee waiving associated with this fund in the 2025 budget. So total of $20,000 in resources. And this follows this. Okay, and that council direct staff to draft a policy for the administration of this fund, including allowance for related use of municipal facilities for council consideration. And here's the amendment that the clerk and I are suggesting to Councillor Strachan, and that council direct staff to consider elements within the draft policy for specific allocations for age-related funding. Councillor Strachan.
Yes, I'm comfortable with that.
Okay. Councillor O'Sullivan.
Sure.
Okay.
Just one note, though, I think when you read that out, you didn't specifically say mental health initiatives, and I don't know if that needs to be there as opposed to just health initiatives, that's all.
I did, and
Okay.
and with indulgence, I'll read it again.
No,
Now
no,
that
no,
I've-
you
Now
don't
that
need
I've got
to.
all the directions here, or
Thanks.
are you going to rely on the clerk for capturing it?
I'm relying on the
Okay.
clerk, that's fine.
Would you like to move this, Councillor?
Sure,
Okay.
thanks.
Councillor O'Sullivan, and I'm sorry. That should, by rights, should be Councillor Strachan to move it. Yes, sorry. And you'll second it. Unless, I'm sorry.
Sure.
I never look at Councillor Wilson up there in the corner. Okay, great. I'll call the vote. All in favor? Great. All right. That's super duper. Okay, we're going to move on to K.7.2, Bell Hall Equity Contribution. And that is coming from Ms. Martin, Director of Planning and Development.
Perfect. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I do not have a formal presentation this evening in regards to the request for council, but staff are looking for a resolution of council to support the CMHC application to go towards the renovation of Bell Hall. So where things stand today in regards to the feasibility study we've been working through with CADCO is that the renovation and conversion of Bell Hall from the former dormitories would be into 60 affordable rental units. So as part of the application, the municipality needs to provide an equity contribution. So that's on the capital side as it relates to the construction and development of the units, up to a value of $5 million. As well as part of the funding formula, it included a provision where the municipality provides an annual operation subsidy to Bell Hall of $200,000. So staff are here tonight to seek a formal resolution of council for this commitment to be included as part of the CMHC application. The project cost is estimated around $30 million, and the majority of it would be funded through grants and loans from CMHC and FCM, which we are actively seeking out. I also do want to note that staff are also looking at other funding avenues to help offset that $5 million equity contribution on the municipality's part. So to that end, the resolution is before council this evening, seeking that commitment, which would then be included as part of the application to CMHC, which is anticipated by the end of this month. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. What I'm going to propose to do is read the motion to get it on the floor, and then we can talk about it. So the motion that we're going to consider, and I'll ask someone to move and second it, and we won't vote on it until we've had a thorough discussion about it. That the municipality of North Grenville hereby commits to contribute up to a total of $5 million in equity funding through the construction and development phases of the Bell Hall project to support the redevelopment of Bell Hall, and that the municipality of North Grenville further commits $200,000 annually once redevelopment is complete for the operation of Bell Hall. Okay. So let's get it on the floor. Is anyone willing to move it? Thank you, Councillor O'Sullivan. And someone to second it? Deb, thank you. Deb Wilson, Councillor Wilson, sorry. All right. So I have a few questions or for clarification to the Director of Planning. This is a requirement in order to submit an application. Unless we have some equity position in the project and are able to ensure its fees or sustainability, we need to commit an annual amount of money for the operation of this hall. Is that correct?
That is correct, Deputy Mayor. So as part of that funding formula, we looked at what would be that gap on the operations side when we're talking about the annual subsidy. We do have a commitment in principle from the counties to provide some funding for 20 of the units being deeply affordable through the rent geared to income stream, as well as the rents that we collect. But the big piece being the equity contribution towards the capital project, the capital side of the project, in that we can only get so much in loans and grants from partner agencies, including FCM and CMHC. The municipality still has to demonstrate that they're going to put some funds towards the project. So that works out to be about $5 million of the overall project cost when looking at the funding envelope from CMHC.
And so I'll note that in this resolution, it says up to 5 million. That's correct. And you indicated in your report that staff are looking for ways to offset that amount. And that would not be, well, I guess that's part of the financing mix, but until we get into the construction phase, we won't have to pony up that cash, right?
That is correct, Deputy Mayor. So staff are looking at other opportunities and other grants that could help bolster that 5 million contribution on the part of the municipality. And should the municipality not be successful in our CMHC application, the likelihood of the project moving forward would then come back to council, as we would have to look at other avenues for funding the retrofit and the reuse and repurposing of Bell Hall. But a further analysis would be required at that time, should we not be successful in getting funding through CMHC.
And my final question before I turn it over to my council colleagues is there's a certain sense of urgency due to an imminent federal election and a question about whether this envelope of money through CMHC will survive. Is that correct?
That is correct, Deputy Mayor. It typically CMHC's underwriting time is about 90 days. And just given the political climate right now with the federal government, it's uncertain as to whether or not an election will be called right away once the federal government sits again at the end of March. So we are trying to get our application in under the current funding envelope, just to try and provide a little more certainty in regards to approvals.
Thank you. Any questions from my council colleagues? Councillor Strachan, Councillor O'Sullivan? Yes?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to clarify for anyone listening out there, how many units will this result in for housing and the size of the units, please?
Through Deputy Mayor to Councillor O'Sullivan. So there'll be 60 affordable units, a mix of 1 and 2 bedrooms. I don't have the mix in front of me at this moment, but there are more 1 bedrooms than there are 2. And there would be some programmable space within the building for the residents to allow for different agencies to come in, a communal meeting space, but trying to create and repurpose this building where there's also accessibility in mind. And through CMHC, there would also be some considerations for energy efficiency. So taking a building that is sitting vacant and has a yearly operating cost just by being vacant and repurposing it into something that brings benefit to the community and meets a growing need in regards to affordable housing and purpose-built rentals.
Thank you.
And before I call the vote, I just want to confirm again that we've been working with CADCO, which is a consulting agency that primarily focuses on affordable housing development and project management, and that eventually, once it's completed, we'll have a third party manage the property, the operations, and our contribution or our commitment to contribution is $200,000 a year towards the operations. Is that correct?
That is correct, Deputy Mayor. Under the CMHC program, there has to be the operator of the building has to be demonstrated to having that level of expertise for a set period of time. Here at the municipality, we don't. The counties operates housing, but we don't operate housing at the municipal level. So we're looking at a third party that could come alongside the municipality to help administer the operation of the building. And should that be successful, there'll be further agreements that would come before council to solidify that relationship and what the terms of that relationship are and for how long. Nothing would preclude the municipality down the road from setting up our own housing division through a municipal housing corporation to operate the building in the future. But as for the CMHC guidelines and requirements, we do have to have that third-party partner at the start initially, just to ensure that there will be someone there to operate the facility.
Great, thank you. Any final questions before I call the motion? None? Okay. All in favor? Great. Passed. We're moving on now to a period of questions from public and media. Did we get any? No? And next is confirmation bylaw. And it reads as follows. Be it resolved that bylaw 005-25 to confirm the proceedings of council at its regular meeting held on January 15th, 2025, be adopted and passed. Can I have someone to, yes, Councillor Wilson, and seconded, Councillor O'Sullivan. There's no questions on this. All in favor? Great. I'm getting good at this here. Finally, hit my stride at the very end. Resolution to adjourn. I have someone move that. Councillor Strakian and Councillor O'Sullivan. Sorry, and sorry, you're a little late there, Councillor Wilson. Okay, there's no discussion on this, as I recall the mayor saying very often. So all in favor? Meeting adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody, for indulging me.